We welcome Sean Callahan of Husker Online. And Sean, I can't even do it. Like, I want to poke holes in the Dylan Raiola thing. I can't. He looked really good in the spring game. He looked awesome. I get why Nebraska fans are so excited.
Yeah, you compare that to like Arch Manning's spring game debut a year ago. I mean, I've been around a long time here, and I can't recall ever an incoming guy, especially with the hype that he had, not only live up to it, but exceeded in a lot of respects. I mean, he started the game 15 of 21 for 239 with 2 touchdowns. He had a pick that went off the jersey of a receiver and it bounced in the air. So you really can't pin that on him, but everything about it, the way he managed it, his comfort level at the line of scrimmage, his touch on the deep ball, his ability to throw the ball into tight windows. I mean, there's a lot to be optimistic going forward with Dylan Raiola running this Husker offense.
My favorite throw, I think, was the first touchdown throw where they're into the corner of the end zone, leads the receiver perfectly, but puts it right where he can catch it with his feet in bounds. And it was because that's what I was wondering is this is a younger guy. He's been to a bunch of high schools. Is he going to look like he needs to be in an offense for a while to really grasp it? And he looked incredibly comfortable. I think that's the word you used is exactly right.
Yeah, and he's got different arm slot angles. I mean, there was some in the backfield where he trains with Mahomes' quarterback coach down in Kansas City sometimes, and he said he's going to work out with Mahomes a little bit in the month of May if he can when he's down there. And he's got those different arm slots and angles, and he has a baseball background. People don't realize that Dylan Raiola probably was a Division I baseball player too if he wanted to be. I mean, he was a really good catcher down in Texas. Then when they moved to Arizona, he stopped playing, but that baseball background, you could see it just with some of the way he has that arm angle and the different slots that he can throw a football. And the deep ball that he threw to Jalen Lloyd, it hardly looked like he put any effort into that throw. He just kind of flicked his wrist and it was down the field 50 yards.
Now we're really going to turn up the hype machine. Sean, do you know which quarterback was a catcher growing up, right?
Matthew Stafford.
Tom Brady.
Oh, Tom Brady. Oh, was Matthew? Yeah, Matthew Stafford was a catcher too, though.
For Clayton Kershaw. There you go.
That was a heck of a team.
But yeah, no, Brady was a catcher too. It's interesting because that is it's probably the most cerebral position in baseball, but it also requires some of the strangest physical skill set of any in sports. And it's weird that we both of us just rattled off quarterbacks who are catchers.
Yeah, I thought the Stafford Kershaw one was the all-time. I didn't realize Brady was that good of a catcher too. So you're right. That baseball background, Mahomes, his father, he was a great baseball player. But Dylan, his maturity level is what really jumps out. I mean, I just think when you normally see a freshman come into college, a high school kid, really, they're just, as Bo Pelini would always say, they're swimming in it. They just, they don't even know how to get around campus, let alone run a Division I major offense. And here's Dylan Raiola acting like he's been here for years, and all the pressure, all the spotlight on him, and he still did not look pressed or under kind of high stress situations. And granted, he had a green jersey on. There was no contact for the quarterback, and really no major pass rush. They kept a lot of their top defensive players out of the spring game, like Ty Robinson and Nash Hutbacher, Isaac Gifford. But it wasn't, he was still making throws. I mean, it wasn't like they were just letting him throw the ball.
Well, I said this on the show yesterday. If Nebraska had all of its number one defense in, and Matt Rhule had said to Tony White, hey, flip the switch, shut this down, they probably could have. But Matt Rhule's not stupid. He knows what's going to get 4 months of positive buzz, and it's Dylan Raiola and also Heinrich Haarberg and Daniel Kalen looking pretty good.
Yeah, and I think the genius of Matt Rhule's spring plan, he took his basically 8 or 10 top players, and the guys that have logged a lot of snaps, over 1,000 snaps, he said, in their careers, and he didn't play them in any of the 3 major scrimmages. So what does that do? It kind of slots up number 2 guys to the 1s. It takes 3 guys to the 2s. Who are you most worried about going into the transfer portal? Guys that are 2s and 3s a lot of times. Sometimes 1s will go in. But by feeding those guys with additional reps with the 1s and the 2s, giving them more looks. Those players were more engaged, in my opinion, throughout the spring, got more opportunities to develop and possibly break through. And those 8 or 10 guys that didn't play, they're going to be the key players on this defense. And even Jamal Banks, the Wake Forest transfer, he didn't play really in the spring game. So I like the idea of Matt Rhule, because you've got to be worried about the transfer portal, losing some of these guys if you don't give them the playing time they want in the spring.
Well, and that's the thing. Every coach has to figure out a strategy for this, because this is new to everyone. And Matt Rhule, interestingly enough, was not working in college when all these rules changed. He was in the NFL. He comes back to a completely different world. But I kind of think he got a chance to look at it with fresh eyes more than anything else. And it's more of an NFL philosophy of, you don't have to give the veterans that many reps because they have tons of reps. And you kind of do want to see what you have toward the bottom of the roster to figure out what you need. But also, in this day and age, those twos sometimes have to be ones in October, November. You better know what you have.
And you're bringing in so many more younger players, too. I mean, Nebraska had 23 early enrollees and transfers on the spring roster. That's the most they've ever had in the history of the program. So you had a lot of young faces. And look, Ja'Cory Barney, a freshman wide receiver out of Miami, had an outstanding spring game, and he nearly ran a kickoff back. The funny story about that, Andy, is he had an easy touchdown. He thought the kicker was one of his teammates. So he ran at the kicker almost to kind of celebrate with him. And instead, the kicker tackled him going into the end zone, because the different jersey colors and whatnot. But he had an easy touchdown if he wanted to. And, those were the kind of guys that emerged over the spring that we didn't see. Now, they had 2 major injuries. Demetrius Bell, a wide receiver who was probably a top 6 rotational receiver. That was fairly significant, and he was carted off. Does not look good for him. Their other was Bly Hill, a transfer corner, the son of Leroy Hill, former Clemson ACC Player of the Year, played 10 years for the Carolina Panthers. Bly Hill was slotted to potentially be a starting corner. He, too, went down with a knee injury, and we don't know really the outlook on Bly, but it didn't look good either, and Matt Rhule said that after the spring game was over.
Well, and that's depth will get tested even now. So you mentioned the receiver position, which the passing game essentially fell apart last year. The idea was that Jeff Sims was going to come in and he would be that guy, an NFL prospect with big arm and all that stuff, but couldn't stop turning the ball over. And then all of a sudden, Nebraska was effectively they were an option team again, but they were pretty ground-based. Now it feels like they can do more because they're going to be deeper at receiver, and then they have the QBs who can get them the ball.
Yeah, they had so many injuries on the offense. I mean, their top 2 running backs went out with injury. And then Jeff Sims, we know his problems were well documented. And then in the receivers, they lost a couple of their top guys there. So they had a significant amount of injuries at receiver and running back. And then the quarterback play was a complete bust on top of that. The offensive line, through all things, actually was improved. That was maybe the most disappointing thing. But Matt Rhule just had to kind of create a survival offense, create an offense that gives us a chance to be in every game and pull some out in the end. And he gets Nebraska at 5-3 heading into November. You're like, all right, he's going to get him to a bowl. And, he's just trying to figure it out with what he has. And then they went 0-4 in November. That was probably the most disappointing part, is all they had to do was beat a bad Michigan State team in East Lansing, win in overtime at Wisconsin, close it out at home against Iowa, where Chubba Purdy was driving to win the game, throws a pick. I mean, they had so many close calls in that final month. Even the Maryland game was a walk-off field goal where, they should have won that game too. So they were close, even with as poor as their offense was. And in my opinion, Andy, I think they've got an easier schedule this year, at least on paper, as we look at it today in late April.
Yeah, I mean, those look like games they should win. But so who are the skill guys that we need to watch out for in the fall? Like who are they handing the ball to? Who are they throwing the ball to?
The running back position is a wild card because they have 3 different guys on this roster that have started games. Gabe Ervin Jr. has won the starting job now twice, in 2021 for Scott Frost and in 2023 for Matt Rhule. He's been injured twice now with a knee and a hip. He'll be back in the mix. You would think he's in that picture. You have Ramir Johnson, who in 2021, made plays all over the field when Nebraska nearly beat Michigan in Lincoln. And he's been an accomplished player. They love him. He's a former 4-star in New Jersey in his 6th year. So Ramir Johnson is a name to watch. And then Emmett Johnson, who stepped in when those two backs got hurt last year, he kind of came on, and he's the most logical ball carrier that's going to be in that mix. Then Dante Dowdell, they brought him in from Oregon, and the reports were mixed on him, but he had a really good spring game, had the longest run in the game, the only run in the game that was over 20 yards. And the quarterback's not going to really run it. I mean, you'll see those occasional scampers, but that QB run game option, probably not a part of it, unless Heinrich Harburg could be involved in some sort of special packages if that's the direction they want to go. The receiver position, Andy, they brought in 2 transfers, Jamal Banks, an all-ACC second-teamer from Wake Forest, and then Isaiah Naor from Texas, who was at Wyoming, where he was an all-Mountain West player, got hurt, and then never really materialized at Texas and left. But those 2 guys are set. And then Jalen Lloyd, I really like what he's done. He placed at the Big Ten indoor meet in both the triple and the long jump. He's a 50-foot triple jumper and a 25-foot long jumper. Extremely explosive. He's run 10.4 in the 100 in high school. That's the speedster, and that's a classic Matt Rhule recruit there. Nobody was offering Jalen Lloyd a scholarship for football out of high school. Matt Rhule was the only person that offered him a scholarship. In fact, Matt Rhule, when he knew he was taking this job, they began evaluating players. When Evan Cooper was still with the Panthers, Evan Cooper called Jalen Lloyd. He goes, "Hey, you're probably not going to believe me, but I'm coaching right now for the Carolina Panthers, getting ready for a game, but I will be going to Nebraska with Matt Rhule, and we're going to offer you." It was quite a story. And now Jalen Lloyd, he tied Marvin Harrison Jr. for the most receptions over 50 yards for touchdowns in the Big Ten last year. He had 3 of those last year.
And had a big catch on Saturday in the spring game. So it is interesting. And like Isaiah, I remember when he transferred to Texas, that he was considered one of the bigger finds in the transfer portal that year. And then the injury takes away the whole season. And then obviously they were pretty loaded last year and didn't need much else. But that is, it feels like a completely different scenario than what we last saw from Nebraska when they were playing against Iowa.
Yeah, their receiver situation late year was really dire. I mean, Billy Kemp got picked up as a rookie minicamp invite guy, not even an undrafted free agent, and he led them in receiving. Alex Bullock, who was probably their second receiver last year, he was a walk-on from Omaha, and he'll play a little bit too, but they didn't have much. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda got hurt again, 2nd year in a row he's been hurt, and then they had to try to play all these freshmen, Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd, and then Jaden Doss. But now they've upgraded with more transfers and developed more guys in the program. So that position, in my opinion, will be as improved as any on this football team, along with quarterback.
And we've talked about the offense so much. What's interesting is the fall, we're going to be talking about the defense. Like this is a group that was good last year. They bring back almost everybody. Tony White did not get a head coaching job, though he will at some point, one of these cycles coming up. But it feels like that side of the ball is set. And it's just a matter of a slight improvement on offense makes a big difference.
Yeah, can they run the ball and get it done? And the offensive line has to figure out their guards. They've got a center in Ben Scott, a left tackle in Teddy Prohaska, and a right tackle in Bryce Benhart. They've got 2 guards on the roster with starting experience in the program, Henry Latoski being one of them, and then Justin Evans. But then they brought in Micah Mazuka from Florida. And, this is his 3rd Division I school. He is one of the most experienced linemen on the roster.
Hell of a boxing form when he squared up on that dude after a play last year. I think he got suspended for that,
and he looked really good in the spring game. I mean, some of the earlier big runs were on his side. I think it's more just getting him engaged to the Matt Rhule way of life. The talent is not the issue. Mazuka probably will start at left guard if everything goes right.
So defensively, they feel good, I would imagine. That so good that they could just hold a lot of these guys out.
For sure. I mean, Nash Hutmacher and Ty Robinson are NFL-level D linemen. Jamari Butler is an experienced guy. Cam Lenhart was one of the better freshman pass rushers until he got injured last year in the Big Ten. MJ Sherman will take a step forward. Chief Borders is a guy that had a great spring. I think the question, Andy, is do they have edge players that can beat Big Ten tackles with 4-man pass rushes? You've got to be able to win with 4 to get it done in the Big Ten. You can't always blitz. And Tony White is really good at creating 4-man looks where you don't know where the 4th guy is coming from. And, we'll see how creative they can get and how much of a jump those guys can make. They brought in a couple transfer players. Stephon Thompson will probably be a depth guy that will play a little. Then there's a freshman linebacker, Vincent Shavers out of Miami. The Hurricanes actually filled up and dropped him in December. Nebraska picked him up, and he's been really impressive for a true freshman here. And it was just a guy that they kind of fell into. So, and their secondary is deep. They have 5 or 6 guys returning, even without Bly Hill, that have starting experience on the back end of the defense.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun offseason. Now, you guys have to manage the hype around Dylan Raiola as the guardians of the Nebraska hype train. But I will say, like, watching Dylan Raiola, listening to him in interviews, he definitely understands what he's dealing with and knows what buttons to push. Here's a clip from the post game the other day.
I was emotional. I fought back tears walking out the tunnel for the tunnel walk. Growing up as a kid, that's what I knew and that's what I watched. So being a part of it, you come out of the tunnel and you hear the song. It got heavy for me. So I'm just thankful for the fans coming out, and it was a fun experience.
Before that first snap?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really remember. I kind of blacked out, but after that, it was just playing ball, and I had fun.
How were you able to look as comfortable as you did when you had those kind of butterflies and nerves going on in your first appearance here?
Yeah, I have great coaches that prepared me for this. Great teammates that make plays. So, I was just getting the ball to my playmakers, and they made me look good, honestly. So, O-line blocked up great. Running backs ran hard, and receivers made plays. So they made me comfortable once they made plays. So, I would say that's how I was comfortable.
So he definitely understands, like, acknowledging how special Nebraska is, touching on all those nostalgia buttons. But he definitely looks like he's been doing this a long time.
Yeah, and I think he's been trained for it. I mean, he's got his father's background with the 14-year career in the NFL, but he's also obviously one of the best offensive linemen to play at Nebraska in recent history. His uncle is the O-line coach at Nebraska. So he understands as much as any recruit what he's walking into because of his love for this program, his family's connections. And he's been coming here. I'll never forget when he showed up as a freshman in high school to a football camp here. And he was just a JV quarterback at that point because at Burleson, I believe it was John Kitna's son was the quarterback, and he had to back him up. And still that summer, he got offers from Georgia and Nebraska and USC, you name it. And just watching him throw the ball, you're like, wow, this kid is special. It was one of the best young quarterback throwing sessions I've ever seen in the years I've been doing this. And you knew he had it. And, there's a reason why Kirby Smart and guys like Lincoln Riley and,
Ryan Day,
he was their first choice. I mean, you watch the draft, those guys know what they're doing. And this was the guy they wanted to be their quarterback. And Nebraska was able to kind of fall into this situation. And, they've been waiting for a break to help this program turn the corner, and this might be it.
So if you're Matt Rhule, how do you manage these next few months with your whole quarterback room, not just Dylan Raiola?
Yeah, it's a tightrope because Heinrich Haarberg did not walk into that post game at the spring game with the best body language. You could just sense. I mean, I use this analogy to Steve Sipple. It's kind of like you get your brand new car when you're 16, and it's this super nice Honda Accord. You're really proud of it. Then the neighbor across the street, they pull up in the Ferrari with their son. I mean, that's Dylan Raiola. I mean, and no matter how good Haarberg is, he just doesn't have some of the tools and talents of Raiola. But Haarberg still is a very good athlete. He's a high level guy that has pro skills, whether it's a quarterback, an edge, a tight end, a ball carrier, whatever it is. He can do a lot of things. I think that's Matt Rhule's job. How do you keep this room together with these 3 scholarship guys? And will they entertain potentially a transfer just to bring in a 4th scholarship guy to that room?
It is that's the tricky part, trying to figure all this out. It seems like Matt Rhule's got a pretty good handle on how to keep guys engaged. But yeah, that quarterback one is the most political, the hardest to deal with. And now he's going to have the just unfettered hype for Dylan Raiola going into this season. Sean, thank you so much. And we will certainly be in touch.
Yeah, I'm sure the hype train will continue throughout the summer. Thanks, Andy.
Chugga, chugga, choo, choo. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples on 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On 3 Sports YouTube channel.